Welcome back to Just a Dude podcast, where we dive into stories that inspire and entertain. I'm your host, Nathan, and today I'm thrilled to have with us an author whose journey has taken her across the landscapes of America and through the depths of personal transformation. We're talking about Teri M. Brown, the author of 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure. Teri's story isn't just about cycling across the country on a tandem bike. It's about healing, growing, and learning from every mile. Joining us today is Teri Brown, a woman of many talents and stories. Born in Athens, Greece, and now calling the North Carolina coast home, Teri has transformed her life's experience into compelling narratives. From her days as an Air Force brat to her recent cross-country cycling adventure with her husband, Bruce, Teri has lived a life full of unexpected turns and profound lessons. She's not only an award-winning author with a diverse portfolio of both fiction and nonfiction, but also someone who has learned to navigate life with a set of 10 little rules that she shares in her latest book. So buckle up, or should I say saddle up, as we explore life's adventures with Teri Brown. Welcome to Just a Dude podcast, Teri. We're so glad to have you here.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent. Teri, is there anything, I know I gave you a little introduction, but is there anything you would like the audience to know about you or a little background for your new book?
Yeah, so I guess what I love to tell people is that I've not been an author my whole life. I thought I wanted to be an author as a child. I wrote really poor poetry in high school, like all girls do. And then I got married and I had 4 children, and then I got divorced. I homeschooled my kids. I remarried, and that marriage was probably one of the biggest mistakes of my life because it turned out to be an emotionally abusive relationship. And I stuck with that for 14 years because I did not want to be divorced twice. And I was going to make this work. And, you can't make something work if the other half of you doesn't want to make it work. And so I got out of that. Yeah, it does take 2. And I got out of the relationship in 2017, and words started flowing out of me. And I had wanted to be an author, but in that relationship, there was no space to do that. Because you're talking about taking all of your inner thoughts, putting it out there on paper, and then showing it to people. Right. And not everyone likes what you do. And that's just a fact. And I didn't have a safe place to land. So if someone had rejected my work, I was already being rejected at home. And there just wasn't that safe place.
Just felt like constant rejection, right?
Yes. I just couldn't do it. There was just too much. So the words started flowing out of me, but I tell people that when you get out of a relationship like that, the damage doesn't just go away because you've left the relationship.
Right.
And so I was writing, but I wasn't really showing it to anyone because I was still too afraid. I was still too unsure of myself. During this period of time, I was pretty certain that my life was pretty much over, that I would be a grandmother and I would be alone, and that would be the end of it. And I was just going to be a sad, lonely old woman who loved her grandkids. And I had my son's friend took this trip on the Appalachian Trail, and he kept this blog. I was reading it like a drowning woman. Like I could not get enough of this information. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to do something big and bold that will prove to people that I still have value. Well, little did I know, no one else thought that. I was the only one, and so I needed to prove it to me, right?
We are our own biggest critics, right?
We really are. In the meantime, I meet my husband, Bruce. That could be a whole podcast all by itself because I had never intended to meet anyone again. I certainly was never getting married again. And he told everyone that he chased me until I caught him, which essentially means that he was just always there until I finally accepted the fact that he was going to be there.
Sure. And I'm sure it was tough coming out of a relationship of 14 years where, you're being mentally abused.
I didn't trust a thing that he said.
Absolutely. I mean, why would you?
No, he would tell me things and I'd be like,
I have to say that's a patient man there to wait.
Exactly. And I've asked him a lot of times, I said, I was crazy then. I mean, I was really crazy. And he said, no, I could see past that. And I was like, I don't know how you could, because I certainly couldn't. But he talked about wanting to ride across the United States on a bicycle. And I thought, oh, that would be an adventure.
It
Like
sure would.
that could meet that criteria. So I said, is this something that you're going to talk about until the day you die, or are you really going to do it?
Right.
He said, no, I want to do it. And I said, count me in. And this was before we were married. I was ready to go on this adventure because I thought, even if I didn't like him at the end of it, then, we could just part ways and I would have done
Right.
this really cool thing.
But you still had an adventure that you could
Right.
go on.
Right. We ended up getting married. And we started planning for this adventure, and we decided to ride a Tandem, which is a 2-seated bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to pull a trailer with all of our stuff. And we ended up going in the summer of 2020, which is COVID summer, which is a crazy summer to try to tackle anything. But we had made that plan before COVID had reared its ugly head. And as we're coming up at the end of this journey, so 3,102 miles, and I am not an athletic person. I like the outdoors, but like walking along the beach and collecting shells kind of outdoors, not big adventure, sweat, and the whole 9 yards. So I'm coming up to the end. We're in Washington, D.C. We're stopping at the Marine Corps Memorial. My husband was a 25-year Marine, and we were raising money for Toys for Tots, so it seemed like this perfect place to stop. And I thought, my gosh, I made it the whole way across the United States on a bicycle. I can do anything. It's not a matter of can I do it, but a matter of what do I want to do. And I thought, well, what is that? I want to be an author. And 14 months later, my first book, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, came out.
Oh, nice.
And since then, I've written 3, so I have 3 novels out. And now I finally have my 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, which are the lessons that I learned while riding across the United States on a tandem.
Yeah, excellent. So how did that idea, I know you said your husband said he wanted to ride a bicycle across the country, but how did the idea of cycling across the U.S. come about, and especially on a tandem bicycle as opposed to 2 separate bicycles?
So for him, he's wanted to do it since 1976. Apparently, a group of college kids rode across the United States during the bicentennial, and he was in the military. It wasn't like he could get the time off, but he's always been an avid cyclist. And he watched this journey, and from that point on, said to himself, someday I would love to do that. Well, now he meets me, and I'm all for this idea, but I have not been on a bicycle in 40 years. So there is no way, there's no amount of training that is going to get me up to speed with him, who has been riding nonstop since he was a teenager. It's impossible. I cannot do enough.
Right.
And so he said, what if we do the tandem? Because you're never, you're only as fast as the slowest person. You can't push it any faster than the person who is the worst of the two of you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, would you feel okay with that? I mean, this is like your big dream. Are you going to be happy doing it on a tandem instead of as fast as you can go on a 2-wheel? And he said, no, I would love it. So we just started training. And yeah, it's crazy. Now that we've done it and you start talking with people, there are quite a few people who go across the United States on a bicycle.
Right. Not
so many on a tandem.
No, I was going to say, when I heard your story, this is the first one I ever heard of a tandem bicycle across the country. And that was just amazing to me that you both did it together.
Yeah. And thinking about the fact that when we started this journey, we had been married for just over a year. And so we knew each other, but not super well yet.
Yeah, it's still newlyweds,
yes,
right?
Very newlyweds. And so we had to do a lot of learning. I tell everyone that 3 months on a tandem is 20 years of marriage. We call it tandem time.
You are literally together 24/7.
24/7. And we're never further apart than about an arm length. Mm-hmm. We were sleeping in a tent. Everything we did together. We didn't have separate space to be in. And not only that, if we argued, we had to figure out what to do with that very quickly, because it's not easy riding a tandem bicycle when you're not happy with the person who's on your bicycle with you.
Exactly. The last thing you want to do is be unhappy with either the person you're staring at or the person that's staring at you, right?
Exactly. So we rode angry one time, and only for part of a day. And we stopped at a Dollar General, and I don't remember. I had said something. He took it. He was very upset by what I said. It wasn't pretty. And we get to this Dollar General, and I thought, I've got food, I've got drink, I've got a bathroom, and I have air conditioning. I don't have to leave here. So we got our snack, and then he said, come on, let's go. And I said, I'm not getting on the bike. He was like, you're not what? And I said, I'm not getting on the bike. I'm not getting on the bike until we fix whatever this is. And he said, fine, let's fix it. I said, I don't think you're ready. And I walked down the sidewalk and sat down and continued eating. And about 10 minutes later, he came and sat next to me, and he said, fine, let's fix it. And so I listened to him. He listened to me. We both apologized. We got back on the bike. And we found out that for us, the best thing to do is to take a deep breath, think about what it is. Did they really mean it that way? And if you feel that they did, then conversation is needed. And if you feel they didn't, can you let it go? Is it something you can just let go, not bring up later, but honestly let go? If you can't, then we need to have a real discussion, not a pointing our fingers discussion, not an irate, lots of words discussion. Just talk about it, figure it out so that we can move forward.
Yep. I can't agree with that more. That's the things that my wife and I try to practice whenever we do have those arguments is we need to sit down, talk to each other, say how we're feeling, listen to how the other person's feeling.
Exactly.
And then generally when we hear each other's sides, it just dwindles on its own by saying, okay, maybe I overreacted a little bit,
right?
Or maybe I took it the wrong way. 99% of the time, I will admit this. Don't tell my wife, but I'm wrong. So, one thing is I realize that though too.
Don't we all though sometimes take things? We hear something and our
Absolutely.
Immediate response is, I can't believe they said that. And then when you talk to them about it, they're like, oh, I actually meant, and they tell you what they meant, and the two are so far apart. And
even saying, I don't even remember saying that.
Did I say that? I'm sorry. I certainly, wow. Yeah, when he told me whatever, I don't even remember now what it was, but whatever it was, he told me, and I thought, I don't think I meant it that way, but I'm sorry that it came across that way. I really am. And I will try to do better to not do that. And he said, and I will try to give you a little more leeway, understanding that sometimes things are just said. And I said, great. Can we get back on the bike now? And off we went. It was,
That's awesome. So that kind of your, I have to assume that's not your first argument, right? As a married couple, but
no,
probably.
it was not the first one, but it was the first one that really mattered because we needed to be able to do something together.
Exactly. You couldn't just go in different rooms or you go do something and your husband go do something else. You were
and you
literally
just wait
stuck
for
together.
it to go away, right?
Yes.
Right. And I think that's probably what we had done up to that point is you'd have a little bit of a tiff and then I'd go to my office and he'd go to the garage. And then by supper time, it was kind of like, what are we upset over? I don't even remember. And we would eat supper and it was over. But we're on a bicycle, moving together, pulling a load. And you just cannot do that when you can't communicate with the person in front of you. He was in front, I was behind. I was talking to him and I'd get one word, yes, no, answers back. It just wasn't any fun. And it was like, we don't want to do this the whole way across the United States. This stinks.
Yeah, that would be a lousy 3,000 miles for sure. It was probably already hard enough on a bicycle, on a tandem bicycle. But if you're mad or have arguments, that makes for a long 3,000 miles.
Exactly.
So on your trip, and I don't want to get, too much about the specifics because I want people to go through the books, but did you plan it all out ahead of time? Or was it just kind of like, we're going to ride till we get tired and then we'll stop? How did you guys plan out your trip?
Okay. So there's me, and then there was how it really happened. Okay. So before we even left North Carolina and we flew all of our stuff out to Oregon and we started in Oregon, I sat out at the kitchen table. I figured out how many miles we were going to go every day. I figured out where we were going to stop. I had it all in a notebook. It was perfect. Unfortunately, on day one, we didn't get as far as I thought we were going to get. That's okay. I just rearranged, made it all work. Day two, we also did not get as far as I thought we would. And so I rearranged. Day 3, I threw it out because it was obvious that there are too many variables. What is the weather like? What are you feeling like? How bad are the hills? Yep. Did you have a flat tire? Did you have more than one flat tire? Because we've had that happen. Did you have, did the food that you ate for lunch not sit right?
Yeah, didn't think about that one. Exactly.
Is the humidity unbearable? Is the wind blowing against you? All of those things that you cannot plan for at the kitchen table.
Yeah,
So the reality
you tried to plan for all that.
Yeah,
but my wife and I did a cross-country trip for 2 weeks. I call it cross-country, but we started here in Ohio. We went all the way out to Wyoming and then down to Arizona and then came back. And so it was a long trip. It was like, I think 7,200 miles that we drove with a camper behind us. So kind of similar, but it was so hard to plan that out with a vehicle where I know that, all I got to do is push the gas pedal harder. Right. I cannot imagine how that would have been with a bicycle where you can't just push a gas pedal. You are the gas pedal.
You are it. Yeah. I was asked several times, is that an e-bike? And I said, only if my name is E. That's
exactly.
So what eventually then happened is that we got to the point at night, we would look at the map and we would look at where are some places we could stop. And we would pick place 1, 2, and 3. And as we're approaching that first stop, hey, how are you feeling? It's 12 miles between this stop that we're coming up on and the next one. Do you have 12 miles in you? If the answer was yes, we went on. Okay, we're getting up to stop number 2. We can stop here, or we have 13 miles between here and the next stop. Do you have 13 miles in you? The answer is yes, we went on. If the answer was no, that's where we stopped. So we did a little bit of planning. Sometimes there was nothing to plan. There's nothing between here and there. It's 70 miles and you have to make it.
There's no choice.
That is the choice. So, you just had to do what you had to do.
Actually, I was just curious about that because I know that it's got to be, if you're a planner, that would be probably extremely tough. That my wife is the same way. So you and her would probably get along well. But I'm the type of person where I think, hey, let's plan a trip for this weekend. And she's like, oh, no, that's too spontaneous. And I'm like, well, it's Tuesday. We've got, 4 days that I can plan this. And no, I need weeks, months.
Yes. So I tell everybody, I love spontaneity. As long as you let me know it's going to happen and I have it in my calendar.
Exactly.
Today I'm going to be spontaneous.
I love that. That's perfect. I got to share that with my wife for sure.
She'll love it.
So the journey obviously was a big thing, but you came up with some rules, right? During your trip. Can you share some of your 10 little rules that you learned from the journey with us?
Yeah, I will. So first I want to let you know that I don't think that these rules are something new. You've probably had this thought at some point in your life. And I also don't want anyone to think that these are the only 10 rules.
Sure.
These are the ones that mattered the most to me. And at the end of every chapter in my book, I ask some self-guided journaling questions and allow you then to go and make little notes. Create your own rules. These are just kind of like a guideline of what helped me. And I hope what it does is that inspires you to go and figure out what is going to help you live an adventurous life, whatever adventurous means to you. That doesn't mean you have to be on a tandem.
So you're giving a set of rules to help people, to guide them to either enhance or even use them because, hey, they might be practical, or enhance them or change something. Just get people thinking about how they can improve their life.
Exactly. So I'm going to tell you about 2 of the rules.
Okay.
The first one is never quit on a bad day. That's my rule number 9. And this happened because we had a 70-mile day. No choice. It was hot. The wind was against us the whole day. Did I mention it was hot?
Yeah.
We had the rear tire went flat 3 times. And in order to change the rear tire on a tandem bicycle when you're pulling a trailer, it's a major thing. You have to unhook everything, unload everything. So we had 3 flat tires. We went through one valley in which the mosquitoes were so large, they were about the size of your fist.
Oh.
They were ginormous and they were just it was horrible. We get to the end of this day. We're so exhausted that we get to the city limits, and my husband stops the bike. I said, what are we doing? He says, I have to rest. We rested 2 more times in the next 2 miles. The first motel we got to, we decided that was it. It was to call it a motel is kind. Okay, it's kind. But it had a bed, it had running water, and across the street was this restaurant called Flit Burger. So there was burgers and ice cream and like, what more could you ask for?
Sure. And air conditioning.
And air conditioning, right? So we stopped, and I wrote a blog post that day that said, I think we're done. We've gone over the Rockies. We're now into Montana. I'm not having fun. This is drudgery. Today was a horrible day. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow we decide to pack up our stuff, get an Uber, and go to an airport and go home. And I was writing a blog, and so people are reading this, and I had a friend reach out to me, and she said, hey, what you've done so far is amazing. And if you quit today, you could hold your head up high, because there are few people that you know that have ever ridden a tandem bicycle across the Rocky Mountains.
Absolutely.
However, don't quit on a bad day. You'll always wonder, could you have made it? Because right now you're emotional, and you're going to quit with those emotions because you're tired and just worn out. She said, give yourself a couple of days. Take it easy. Enjoy life for a few days. And if you still think to yourself, this is terrible, then quit, and you'll feel fine with that.
Yep.
But if you just do it because of this emotional stuff that you're feeling, you'll always wonder, could I have made it if I stuck it out?
Yep. That's an amazing point, because you think of that, if you do quit on a hard day, if you take a little break, like you said, and just take a break, step away from the situation for a little bit, think it over, let the emotions wear down, then you have a more logical sense of thought
then
you can put
can
towards
do
it.
You can do things like your pros and cons list.
Absolutely.
When you're emotional and exhausted, your pros and cons list doesn't mean anything. There are no pros. There's a million cons. Yep. You're even making things up. I didn't like the way my shoelaces felt. I think anything could be on that cons list. Well, the next day we did decide to ride, but it was a short day. It was the best day, one of the best days we had. The wind was behind us. There was a storm back behind us that blew us into the next town. There was a point where we could not spin any faster because the wind had us. It was fabulous. And at the end of that day, it was like, we can keep doing this. Because we were no longer exhausted. We had second breakfast at 10:30. We were in our hotel by noon. We didn't camp that night. We actually had a hotel. We slept for 4 hours, got up, ate dinner, went back to sleep, slept for 12 hours. Well, then we were perfect, ready to go, right?
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right?
Exactly. So we have used that idea of never quit on a bad day over and over and over again. There are those times where you're just frustrated and you just want to throw everything and say, I am done. And at that moment, you're done. But what will happen after a good night's sleep? A little bit of protein, maybe a vegetable or two,
Make sure you're not hangry, right?
Yeah. And so the don't quit on a bad day has been something that has helped me through those moments when you want to quit and then you think, okay, why don't we give this maybe a date? Like if I still feel this way a week from now, then maybe this isn't the right project for me.
Right.
And then when you make that decision, and you can, there's nothing, I'm not ever saying don't quit.
Sure.
I'm just
sometimes
saying
we just have to quit. There's not.
Sometimes you look at it and you say, this is no longer good for me.
Yeah, it's not beneficial. It's not good for my health or lifestyle, whatever it may be. Yeah.
Right. But you want to do it when you can do that logically, when you can be in your logical brain instead of your emotional brain. And I learned on this trip that I have a very, very active and large emotional side. I mean, I've always known that, but it was very apparent on this trip.
Showed up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Huh?
And I'm one of those people that when something bad happens, I have to cry and rail and throw my arms around and say the world is over. Everything as I know it has ended. Woe is me. And once I've gotten that out of my system, I can take a deep breath and say, now, what do I need to do? I can't do that beforehand. I have to let all of that junk out. And
you have a process.
And for me, that works.
Yeah.
The first time that happened, my husband didn't know what to do with it. I'm standing on the side of the road. We're in the only shade we've had for miles. There's cows standing here in the pasture, and I'm just sobbing. He tries to like hug me and pat me, and I shrug him away. I don't want him to touch me. It only makes everything worse. So I cry. He just stands there looking very distraught, isn't sure what to do with me. I dried my eyes. I threw my leg over the bicycle and I said, well, come on, let's go. And he looked at me and he said, what? And I said, well, we can't stay here. I mean, the next hotel's 10 miles from here. We got to go. Man, we can't sleep here. And he was pretty shocked at the change from this, quivering, crying, massive thing to logical, we have 10 miles to go and we're not getting any closer by standing here. And he learned through the trip, I'd start to cry like that, and you'd see him, he'd get out a snack. He's just waiting because he knows it's going to take me a few minutes.
Yeah.
I'll
he
get
knows
it
it's
together.
your process to process items. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that was pretty interesting. Yeah. Now, my other one that is a favorite is rule number 3. And there's a little bit of a sad story to it. So I'm going to kind of preempt it and let you know. My husband was diagnosed in June of 2022 with glioblastoma, which is an incurable brain cancer. And he passed away 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So that it's been, he for 31 months, he fought the battle, and then there wasn't anything left to fight, and he stopped. So on the day that he passed, I had been waiting for my author copy of this book, the do not sell, author copy. And it came about 45 minutes before he passed away. And of course, he doesn't have his eyes open at this point, but I crawled into bed with him and I'm telling him all about the book. And I laid my head on his shoulder and I started to read it out loud to him. And I read the introduction. I read rule number 1 and all about it. Rule number 2 and all about it. And then I said, rule number 3, do hard things. And he died right then. And he hadn't been able to speak in 2 months because of where the tumor was.
Right.
And I feel like it was both me telling him he could do hard things, which was leaving, which was not something that was easy for him because he's a fighter. He was a Marine for 25 years. You don't just
I'd
give
have
up,
to say
right?
with him being a veteran, I'm sure that fight was in his vocabulary every day.
Every day. And then I think the other thing it was a reminder to me that my next several weeks, several months was going to require me to do hard things. That was his reminder. So it was, for the longest time, never give up on a bad day was kind of my mantra. But since he passed, I now have do hard things. And I'll get up in the morning and I'll think, oh, I don't want to do this day. And then I hear his voice and I think, do hard things, Teri. And then I just get up and get the day started. Because we can do hard things. It isn't going to kill us. In fact, we have a lot more in us than we know we have.
And I think time shows us that time and time again, doesn't it? When we think we have no more, somehow we get more.
Well, and I look at like these endurance athletes who they talk about hitting the wall and their body is done. If they listened only to their body is completely done. There's nothing left to give. You need to stop. We're dying. And their mind says, oh, no, we're not. We have more. And it's the mind that pushes them through that and allows them to finish that race. And I think all of us have that. We may not be an endurance athlete, but we all have the ability in our mind, that will, that you can say, no, we are moving forward. Even if everything else around you is screaming, no, you're not, you need to stop. So that's my new rule. Rule number 3, do hard things.
Do hard things. And I can't imagine, and again, that my heart goes out to you with that being so fresh. But one thing that I'm sure that you're probably glad of is that you have this book that essentially, even though I know you wrote it, you guys got to write together.
Yes.
And so you'll always have that piece of him with you.
And the fantastic thing is the last few weeks were very difficult. Being a caregiver for someone who's dying of cancer is not pretty. And I had even said to my therapist how I was very worried because my memories seemed to all be focused around medical stuff. That wasn't pretty, and it was very difficult. And he assured me, he said, with time, it'll get better, da-da-da-da. Well, very shortly after that, I started promoting this book is coming out, and I needed to start promoting it. I thought, well, do hard things. And so I got on the first podcast, and then I've been on a few more, and I get to talk about him. And I'm not talking about medical equipment, and I'm not talking about procedures and doctor's appointments. I'm talking about the ride that we took and going over the Rockies and seeing the horses and all of the things that we did. And it has brought an immense amount of joy to be able to do that with this book and realize he's not here, but he's still with me.
He's still here. And he's going to be in ink form forever. Now that you wrote the bike, the book. Were there any rules that you discovered or found that were extremely difficult to follow?
Oh yeah, most of them.
Most of them. Every single one.
Every single one. But the one that sticks out to me is rule number 4. It's called enjoy the downhills. And I know that sounds like, well, why wouldn't you enjoy a downhill? But let me explain. In the first, I don't know how many days, 10, 15 days, I feel like all we did was go up.
Sure.
Up. We were going over a couple of different mountain ranges in Oregon, and it was just up. I live in North Carolina on the coast. It is flat here. I live in a high point at 35 feet above sea level. So there's just no hills. So you can imagine, here we are out there climbing in ways that we have never climbed before. And so it's hard and very difficult. We'd get to the top of this hill that it took us an hour to climb. And we would fly down the other side. Take us, 4 or 5 minutes. And then we'd climb again for an hour.
Yep.
And then we'd fly down, and then we'd climb again for an hour. Over and over and over. It got to the point that I hated going downhill because I knew there was another hill to climb. Right. So I could not enjoy going down because I was going, oh, look at all the altitude we're losing, and I'm going to have to climb all of that. Yep. That was my mindset. And Bruce said to me, Teri, the road is the road. It goes up and it goes down. And no amount of worrying about it or crying about it or getting angry about it is going to change it. There is no magic road fairy that is going to come and just make this road flat.
Yep.
And I thought about that, and I was like, he's right. Here I am working so hard to get to the top, and I'm not even enjoying the 5 minutes of glory as you go, down the other side.
Screaming down the hill, yeah.
Yeah. And then what I learned, which was even harder, is how to enjoy the ups as well. Because you're going up, and sometimes at 4 miles an hour, chug, chug, as you go up this hill. But do you know the things that you can see at 4 miles an hour that you do not see at 25 miles an hour?
Oh, I'm sure.
Right? You see the eagle's nests that are being built. You see all of the wildflowers. You see small animals that are, off in the woods. We even went across a stream one time. So the stream went down under the road. But as we crossed across that area, you could feel the temperature change.
From the water.
Because the stream was so cold and the air coming over the road. And you would have never felt that going 25 miles an hour down the road.
No, or if you were in a vehicle.
You'd never even know. You wouldn't even notice the stream, let alone.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I learned to not only enjoy those downhills and to not worry about what's coming next or all the work that I had to do to get to the downhill, but to also enjoy going up. That it's okay. But that's hard for me to do. I'm not really good at staying in the moment. I'm a list maker. I tend to always be thinking about the next 16 things on my list. I'm constantly pulling myself out of the now, trying to go into the future and fix things before they happen. Yep. So yeah, that was a hard one for me.
I can understand that. I mean, I've even had that point too, thinking about enjoy the downhills, but we're always thinking about the uphill because that's the part we don't like, right?
Right.
That's the part that's more strenuous or whatever. And I'm kind of like you on that I realize the downhill is coming, but in my mind, I'm already past the downhill and going up the next hill.
Going up to the next one. Yeah. And so I really had to change my attitude because I thought, this is terrible. I'm not enjoying going up or down.
Yeah.
And we're only a few days into this ride. And if I don't change my mind pretty soon, I'm never going to make it.
Yeah.
How are you going to make it 3,000 miles when at 200 miles, you're already done? There's still a lot of trip left.
Exactly.
So yeah, I had to really change my attitude. And then I think the other one that's really important was to define your success.
Mm-hmm.
When we first got started, there was a lot of pride in both of us. And
Sure.
we weren't going to get off the bike. We were going to ride every moment, every hill, every mile, period. Well, it soon became apparent there were some hills that a tandem bicycle, fully loaded with a trailer, isn't going to get up easily. And we would get up to the top because we were determined, but at what cost? Mm-hmm. Now Bruce is so exhausted he can't move. I'm so exhausted I can't move. We have to move. We have no choice. And we do this day after day. We're going to wear ourselves out. We also had issues like a storm that was coming that had predicted 75 mile an hour straight line winds.
Yeah, that's not good on a bicycle.
No, it's going to get to us before we can get to a safe space. There was the time that there were 10 miles of road that was completely torn up. It was down to the dirt bed. They had a truck that was going through pouring water on it to keep the dust down. There's no way we can ride that on a tandem bicycle. Mm-hmm. It's not safe. We can't do it. So we learned that we had to take help. We had to ask for help and take it. Sometimes we had to push the tandem and that was okay. And it didn't mean we weren't successful. Right. Can you imagine getting to the other end of 3,102 miles and feeling like a failure because you had to accept a ride across a 10-mile roadway?
Yeah. No,
right?
I definitely would not feel like a failure at that. I mean, this is almost like an anecdote for life, right? Sometimes we want to do everything on our own, but occasionally you have to ask for that help.
Yeah. And I tell people, yes, this book will talk about my trip. And that's where I've kind of like picked up my little anecdotes to tell you. But this isn't a book only for athletes who are wanting to do something big. This is for someone who wants to do anything adventurous. And by adventurous, I mean outside of your normal box. So it could be something like changing jobs, moving to a new location, getting into or out of a relationship, figuring out what you're going to do when your children go off to college, riding across the United States on a tandem bicycle, any number of things that are just outside of your normal routine. And what are you going to do to live a life that's a little more adventurous and then do so successfully? And that's what these rules come to.
Yeah, excellent. And these roles obviously lead to personal growth and healing. And that's what I wanted to get to next. But, how did this physical journey parallel your personal healing journey, especially post-divorce? And right. I mean, I have to assume now you're doing some healing as well. Yeah.
Bruce told everyone that the woman who started the trip was not the woman who finished the trip. And I have to agree. First of all, there's a lot of time, right? You have hours and hours every day on the back of a tandem bicycle pedaling. So physically you're pedaling, but your mind doesn't have to do a whole lot. And I thought about things and I kind of fixed things. You think about things enough and you can start to make sense of them and put them in the boxes that they belong in. I also physically challenged myself far beyond the me that I knew. I'm not athletic. I tell people I'm a desk jockey. I'm not, it's just not who I am, but I did it. And I went out there and I had to dig deep and I had to find things that I didn't know I had and go out into do this hard thing. And by doing that, it kind of healed those parts of me that had been told you're worthless. You're no good. You can't make any good decisions. All of those things that I had been hearing for years and years, I started to realize that that's not true. Look at me. I am capable. I am doing hard things. I am making good decisions. And by the time the trip was over, that's not to say that there's never any, we called it swamp gas, where, things just kind of bubble up out of nowhere and you think, whoa, where did that come from? I still get that on occasion, but it's on occasion. And I recognize it for what it is very quickly. And I think, oh, look at that swamp gas. I wonder where that came from. What touched that? Okay, let's put that back in the box where it belongs. And you can move on. Whereas before, I was pretty much paralyzed by it.
Nice. So this trip gave you an opportunity to, even though you were with Bruce, gave you an opportunity to kind of be with yourself.
Yes.
And be out in nature and kind of experience these things through. I'm sure that everything that you saw on the trip probably inspired some type of thought and probably led to the self-discovery, essentially.
I think nature, I think physical activity, I think stretching yourself in ways that are hard, that are kind of beyond your normal, are all perfect for growth. And that's
Absolutely.
what we need. If life were easy all the time, it was just a perfect straight line and we just went from point A to point B, we'd learn absolutely nothing.
And we'd probably be bored as heck.
We'd be bored to death. But, when life is a big tangle and there's, roadblocks in your way and you have to figure out how to get over them, under them, through them, whatever, that's when you're learning. And that's when you're figuring out what you're made of. And that's when you make these revelations, 3,102 miles. And I thought, I can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I would feel the same way if I did that.
Yeah. And I actually had someone say to me, well, could you run a marathon? And I said, yes, I could. I don't want to.
Exactly.
I have zero desire to do it. But if I wanted to, I have no doubt. If I wanted to, I have no doubt that even at 61, having never been a runner, I could go run a marathon.
Yep.
I would have to practice. I would have all the things that would have to be done. But could I do it? Yes, I could. I have zero desire, so it will never happen.
Good. Yeah, you and me both, Teri. I have no desire to run.
None.
Someone says run, and I think of running away.
Is there a bear chasing me?
Yeah, am I running for my life? Because if not, then there doesn't seem to be a point.
I've always told my kids, if you ever find me dead on a jogging trail, know someone moved me there.
Yes.
Like,
you were not there on your own?
No, I didn't do that on purpose. That was...
Yep, exactly. I'm the same way with me. If you find me on a jogging trail, you know that it's foul play.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. So what advice would you give anyone else that's looking to heal through an adventure? Because and this might be a tough question, but I just thought it would be great because you did a lot of healing on this trip and your book discusses this. And so from you coming from a place where you actually took this adventure and did some healing of your own, is there anything that you would, advice you'd give to someone else?
I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to do it. Like, don't wait. Don't put it in this, I'm going to get to it someday, or all I need before I get started is, and then you have this list of things that you're never going to accomplish.
And it just keeps growing.
Right. And I think it's just go do it. That's the first thing. And don't be afraid. And don't be afraid of what's going to come up. Because you're going to be out there and you're going to face trials that you're not ready for. Because I don't care how much practice you do. We had 1,000 practice miles before we went. And I was sure that we were as ready as a person could be. And on day one, I realized we'd bitten off more than we could chew.
That you weren't as ready as you thought, right?
Yeah. And so there's no amount of getting ready that is going to actually make you 100% ready. So you're going to hit these roadblocks, things you weren't expecting. Sometimes they will feel too big. Sometimes it will feel really scary. But don't let it frighten you away. Go ahead and like take that bull by the horns and see where it takes you. Don't be afraid to look down deep and see what that bubbling yuck is. Look at it, explore it. The best way to heal is to bring all of that yuck out into the daylight and expose it to the light and take a good hard look at it, realistically looking at it.
Yep.
Am I really worth nothing? Well, no, I am not worth nothing. And here's my proof, Yep. And so we can put that aside. Is this really true? Well, no, it's really not, come to think of it, and you just start exploring things that way. And I don't think you really have to take a huge, long adventure, but I don't know, 2 weeks alone somewhere where you don't have anyone to talk to but yourself and get yourself figured out. maybe have a therapist in there a couple of times, to give you the
Sure.
right places to go,
To help guide you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really feel like if you're stuck in a situation or you're stuck in a feeling and you can't get out, explore it, bring it out. Don't hide it. It's so easy to take those parts of you that you don't like or whatever and like hide them
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
be afraid to show them to people for fear of what other people are going to think. And I can tell you 95% of people aren't going to think anything terrible. And those 5% that do, ignore them.
Yeah, they're not worth it anyway.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
not
I
worth
hate
it.
to say that, but yeah, and I want to point out to the men that are watching this, because you all know that you're guilty of this, and just as well as I am. So we all, whether you're a man or a woman, when we have these things inside of us, it's beneficial for all of us. And not trying to steal the show here, Teri, but I want to speak to the audience that we all need to do a better job of this and get our mental health in order, because it is such a big part of us. And if we can figure out the things that maybe make us feel bad or give us different thoughts and address those things, bring them to light, we can begin to heal too.
Yeah. And bringing them into the light is that's the big thing.
Yep.
And so if you do that riding a tandem, or you do that taking a walk on the beach, or you do that painting a picture, or you do that writing a poem, like, it doesn't matter, but bring it out and look at it honestly. And if you can't look at it honestly, find someone you trust that can look at it with you.
Yep.
And help you see the reality of it. Because sometimes the traumas are big enough that we really can't look at it and see anything other than terrible, right? So find someone who can help you. Is it a friend? Is it family? Is it a therapist? Who is it? And let them help you look at those things honestly.
Yep.
And bring them into the light. And once that crap is in the light, it really shows what it is, which is just crap. When you have it hidden in the dark, it can be many, many things. But once you bring it out, you can see it for what it really is.
And I noticed it even in my own life, that when I do bring things out that I've suppressed for so long, I sit there and go, why did I suppress that for so long? Now I've dealt with it. It's no longer even an issue for me. All right, Nate, quit being a jerk. Start talking.
Yeah, right. And it's hard sometimes because we all want to be perfect, and we all have a vision of ourselves, of how we want to be seen by others. And I can tell you the vision that I have of myself that I want others to see is not a woman who was abused.
Right.
Or a woman who stayed in a relationship for 14 years knowing it wasn't a good relationship. That doesn't fit my persona of myself.
Exactly.
And yet, without that, I wouldn't be the person that I am.
Absolutely true.
And so I have to just keep reminding myself that is that a decision that I wish that I hadn't made that decision. It would have been great had I been able to do something different. I couldn't at the time, or I would have.
Right.
And now I am where I am, doing what I'm doing, saying what I'm saying. And so, no, it's not the prettiest part of me, but it is part of me. And so I have no problem sharing it with people now. And the more I talk about it, the less hold it has on me.
And it's unfortunate too, when we have bad experiences like that they define a good part of our life.
Yeah.
For us not to think, oh, people are always going to think this, but those parts of our life are generally what make our life better once we address them, understand them. And even though we can't take them back and maybe we would do something different, we learn from that. And if we learn from that experience, the only thing it's going to do is enrich us, enrich those around us to have better lives.
Absolutely. I agree.
Excellent. So this experience writing across country, how did this influence your writing, particularly with your new book, with the 10 Little Rules for Double-Butted Adventure? How did this influence your writing? Did it change any of your style? Did it make you think of, something else? Or
I think that I am better now at, not necessarily in this book, but just in general, I'm better at describing what I see. I'm a people person, very people oriented. I did a really good job with characters. I did a really good job with dialogue. And my very first book that I wrote, which is Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, my editor said to me, Teri, we could literally be anywhere and these people could look like anyone. I need more description. And it's like, I've used kind of, I saw so much and I felt so much. And now when I think about, okay, what does cold feel like? I can pull back to, that night that I was really cold, that I couldn't get warm. And, we saw our breath inside the tent and, those things. And so you start to be able to pull from some of your own experiences. So I think that has helped. And then more than anything, what it did was it's given me confidence that I am a good writer. Here is my work. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Find something you do like, because there are a lot of writers out there. Not everybody fits everybody, where
Right.
I could have never said that before the ride. If someone didn't like my work, then it completely shattered me.
Took it personally.
Yeah.
Right?
It felt very much like you were saying you have an ugly baby. It was just,
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And
I get that, because you put your heart and soul into it. And so it's hard not to get taken aback. But again, like you said, you realize this may not be for everybody.
Right.
And if you have a guy that reads World War II history novels all the time, I'm sure that your book, it might not appeal to that person. It might, but...
And it might.
Yeah.
But the thing is that's okay. Not everybody likes me as a person. And that also is okay. And I've learned that's okay. Now, it's not that I do well immediately. If I get a bad review and I read it, my first thought is I do my whole way. The end of the world, as we know it, right? And then I take a deep breath and I look at it and I think, well, that's one person's opinion.
Yep.
And
Just
then I move
one.
on. So just like I did on the ride, I go ahead and have my little pity party and throw my arms about wildly and the end of the world and I'll never write again and all the things. And then I put my leg over the bicycle and I say, okay.
Let's
one
move
person
on.
One person didn't like the book.
Out of how many that bought it? And
out of how many that did,
yep,
right?
Exactly.
When you look at percentages, you say, wow, if you've got better than 80% of the people who are reading it and liking it, you can call yourself happy.
Absolutely. And hey, I'll even take it this way, Teri. If you've written 4 books now, right?
Yeah.
Is it 4? I think 4. Yeah.
4. Yeah.
4 books now. Obviously, you're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, and I'm finally, and it's because of the ride, able to say I'm an author and I write good books.
You finally have that confidence in yourself.
And I tell other authors, and it's interesting because I've started doing some marketing seminars with some local authors.
Oh,
and
good.
I tell them the first thing that you have to be able to say is, hi, my name is, I'm an author and I write good books. And if you can't say that, all of your marketing will fall flat.
Yep.
Because if you don't believe it,
no one else is.
Then you'll never convince anyone else.
Absolutely.
And so that's the first thing. And riding across the United States gave me that confidence.
So the book's 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure. And if you were to tell the listeners or the people watching, if there's one thing that you hoped readers would take from this specific book, what do you think that would be?
What you need to lead a good, happy, positive, adventurous life is in you. It's there. It's just a matter of tapping into it. And, find what it is that's stopping you and then work around it. Because it's a sad state. I lived in a horrible relationship and was unhappy for 14 years. And I promised myself that I would never be unhappy like that again. That's not to say I don't have unhappy days.
We all do.
My husband passed away. I'm not happy. But I'm not miserable. And I'm never going to be miserable again. And so if you have something that in your life, whether it's your life in general or a particular aspect of your life where miserable is the term you would use for it, you have what's in you to fix that. And so look for it. Figure that out. Go down deep. Find what that is, and then figure out, what can I do to fix this? And then be brave enough to do it. Go out there and ride your 3,102 miles and fix that. So
I love that. And your book will help people to kind of get a good idea, not only of your adventure, but a good idea of how they can use your rules
exactly
for their own life.
Exactly.
Like we talked about before. That's awesome. And I myself love reading books where I get a story and then, but can also learn how to better my life as well. And this is definitely one of those books that I see as one of those, because I'm always looking to better myself. I know I'm not perfect, and I know there's things that I can improve on, and any way that I can do that. And especially with reading, I love it. So I just love the fact that you came on, you brought the book, and hopefully we can get some folks that can read this and enhance their lives, just even if it's just a little bit.
Well, and even if it's just one of the rules.
Yep.
Or one of the rules sparked you to create one of your own. And that's the little mantra that you have for the next couple of months as you try to make a change in your life,
Yep.
And each of these 10 rules for me, I think at different points in my life, different ones will come to the forefront and be the one I have to focus on right now. During his cancer journey, it was don't quit on a bad day. Now that he has passed, it's, do hard things. I suspect that there's going to come a point where I'm going to have to remind myself about rule number 10, continue to dream. There's those things that I know are going to come up. And isn't it wonderful that I have a little reminder that when I'm stuck, I can go back and look at my 10 rules and decide, are there any of these that can help me?
I love that. Yeah. It gives you a nice reference list to go back and say, okay, I'm feeling some kind of way or something needs to change. Let me look at my list and find out what we're going to do.
Yeah. And say, oh, there it is. That's the one that I need to remember right now. Yeah.
Excellent. Teri, what's next for you? Both, do you have any new adventures planned or any new writings coming up?
I do have a lot of writing coming up. I have a children's book that I know that sounds so crazy. I have such a wide variety. I have historical fiction. I have the creative nonfiction. I have a children's book. And I'm also currently writing a contemporary humor about a woman going through menopause.
Oh, nice.
And it's very funny and it's very tongue-in-cheek. And though it's funny, I also kind of want to bring in some of the medical bias that's aimed at women. Because, women go in and they complain about things. I've talked with so many women who, they've been complaining for years, and it took the doctor, 8 years to decide that what they needed was a hysterectomy.
Right.
Whereas if it had, and this will sound, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox, but if it were a man, they would have listened to him right away.
Right.
With a woman, it's like, oh, now you must be hormonal. Take 2 Tylenol and
call me in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. And get out of my office.
Exactly.
Right. And
I've even experienced that from being a husband, of seeing my wife go through some things with the doctor. And it's like, she goes in and tells them what's going on, and they just didn't listen.
They just blow it off. Right.
And believe it or not, we ended up sending her to a functional nutritionist, who does everything naturally. And now she doesn't have the problems and no medicine. So I I don't recommend that for everybody, but I just wanted to give the point that I've even noticed that from my point of view with my wife.
The other thing that I've noticed is as you get older. So now instead of just blaming it on my sex, they also blame it on my age.
Oh, well, you're over this age. So
yes.
Yeah.
You can expect to feel that way. Well, that's all well and good, but yesterday I didn't feel that way, and today I do. And usually aging doesn't happen in an evening. So,
yeah. And it's not one of those things where if I feel it today, I'm probably going to feel it tomorrow too, and the day after. That's what I think of the aging pains.
Right.
Not, I didn't feel this yesterday. I felt it today. I don't feel it tomorrow. And then 3 weeks it comes again. It's like, no, that's not aging. There's something different
going on. There's something going on. And so there's that idea. So even in my humor book that I'm writing, I always do try to touch on some social issues and things. So those 2 things, and I actually have another historical fiction idea, but I keep telling it to hush up. I don't have time to do it right now. I have to finish up these other projects first.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, make sure you get it down on paper, at least the idea.
I have the idea down. I do have the idea down in a couple of quick little notes. And so whenever it pops up in my mind, I say, shh, I have you down.
Nope, not yet.
You're next. Yeah.
Excellent. Are there any additional rules that you've seen there that you might be working on in your life?
Nothing at the moment. I think that I'm really stuck on the do hard things just because I'm 60, right? I'm 61. I have had 2 failed marriages. I had a wonderful marriage that has ended in my husband passing away from cancer. And so I'm starting over again, and so for me, I think probably my rule is going to be, stop judging yourself so harshly, because that's one of the things I do is like, why am I having to do this again? Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with me that I'm having to do this again? And it's like, that's some of that old, gas
Yep.
stuff coming up,
Yep.
that I'm going to have to look
That
at.
swamp
So
gas is coming up.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And yeah, that's tough to get away from that though too. And
yeah,
especially, when you think, like you said, you've gone through, 2 divorces, and unfortunately your husband recently passed away. And I could see why you would think that. But I just have to tell you, just from me, don't mean to make it spiritual, but God does not give us anything we can't handle. And I
right.
think you're a perfect example of that.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
It's just amazing what you've been through, and that you still have the courage and the power to put yourself out there through writing and sharing that story with us, because I'm sure there's someone else out there that's probably even had it worse than you have, right? In the relationship area or marriage or anything.
Right. And my hope is that by being brave enough to talk about the things that were not pretty in my life, that someone else who is experiencing something not pretty in their life will say, now, wait a minute, you mean there is life on the other side of this thing?
Yep.
And the answer is yes, there is.
Absolutely.
There is, if you're willing to go find it.
Yep. And that's what takes the most courage, is that first step.
Yeah.
It really is. Teri, is there anything else that you want to talk about on the show?
I'd love to bring up is that I am also a podcast host.
Oh,
and
nice.
So I do online for authors.
Okay.
And I read books from authors, and once I've read it, then I bring them on the show, and we have a chat. And I never do any spoilers. So when you're done listening, you don't say, "Oh, I don't need to read the book now."
Right.
But I try to give indie authors like myself, that have the small presses or who have self-published, kind of a space that they can come and talk and market and talk about their book and explore. And so if you're a reader and you're looking for, that next book, or you have a to be read pile and you're wanting to know what should be on it, my podcast is a great thing. You can find that on my website as well.
Excellent. And I think now that I know you got the podcast, I'm going to put you in my podcast playlist on Buzzsprout. So
Fantastic.
we can make sure everybody sees and goes towards you, because I love, not saying that I don't love all authors, because I feel like it takes a tremendous talent to be able to write a book, keep your thoughts in line, because my thoughts are all over the place. I'm like the dog in Up that's like squirrel, so, but I just find it amazing. But I also like it when I don't want to call you a smaller author, but a more independent author. I would rather give you my money than a big company. If that makes sense.
I tell people all the time, I'm not saying I would not want to be on the New York Times bestseller list.
Absolutely.
I would love to.
We'll talk about changing your life.
Yeah. The truth is that's unlikely at this point. Anyway, I'm still new. I've only been published for 3 years. So I'm still new. I'm still creating a following. And the New York Times bestseller list, if that's all you read, you miss out on a lot of amazing authors that are out there. I have read so many books of so many different genres that I would have never, ever even known existed had it not been for my podcast. And I love being able to help them highlight that book and tell people about it and use the podcast as a way of saying, hey, look, I'm here. You know
what? That's why I like to have authors on my podcast as well. Now, with you, we got hooked up pretty quick, so I didn't have an opportunity to buy your book first and read it. And I'll be honest, I'm a slow reader, but I can guarantee you after we hang up, I'm going to. So, because I just love the idea of it, and I think it's just going to be so beneficial for my wife and I to both read it and just have that opportunity to learn and grow together. Well, that wraps up an amazing episode of Just a Dude podcast with the incredible Teri M. Brown. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share on your favorite platforms and follow us on social media. Today, we journeyed through her cross-country tandem bike adventure, explored the deep personal growth and healing she experienced, and discussed how those experiences translated into her book, 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure. Teri's insights on life's rules for resilience, embracing challenges, and finding joy in the journey have truly been inspiring. Remember, you can find Teri's book wherever books are sold and follow her adventures in writing on her website and social media. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to apply these little rules to your own life's adventure. Until next time, keep pedaling through life and see you on the next episode of Just a Dude Podcast.